I'm Claire Dooley. You're watching CHGTV, and this is the Geoengineering Report, where we identify the threat in the skies. Lightning storms with no rain, forests that ignite without warning. In this segment, we explore the rise in dry lightning events and ask, could atmospheric engineering be creating these volatile conditions? Dane Wigington with geoengineeringwatch.org reveals how ionized particulates and frequency manipulation may be sparking more than just concern.
I wanted to talk about dry lightning strikes, which you mentioned in your video, because we're seeing in Austin a crazy amount of these right now. What's the deal behind that?
Well, they're ionizing the atmosphere with electrically conductive particulates, and as those particulates interact in the atmosphere, it generates static buildup. So we have to have more dry lightning with an atmosphere saturated with these particulates. And again, you add to that the frequency transmissions, and this is where there's so many layers of insanity. So we know that in order to manipulate the particulates, they're using frequency transmissions. So the electrical conductivity of those particulates is essential to them. And we see, for example, hurricane manipulation, which is a fact. It's not speculation. We have the recordings of the transmissions maneuvering these storms at geoengineeringwatch.org. Your listeners can search, and we're coming into hurricane season now, so it's important people understand the degree to which they can manipulate these storms. If your listeners search geoengineeringwatch.org hurricanes, they'll find our actual real-time recordings of storms being manipulated, like Harvey in Texas, Helene recently, Ian. Again, we've done this numerous times. They do have that much power, but those electrically conductive particulates do spawn more lightning. And when we look at other layers of this insanity that most people are completely unaware of, Polly, for example, the atmosphere is filling with methane, and yes, it is a problem, and no, it's not just calflatulence. That's another narrative. You've heard that narrative, right? We need to worry about the calflatulence, right? So they use that narrative to divide populations.
Job number one is to stop using the sky as an open sewer for all of this man-made global warming pollution. And that's what's making the weather crazy and dangerous, leading to all of the consequences that are on the TV news almost every night now.
Because everyone loves to hate Al Gore, and Al Gore's a part of the problem. We agree with that, but that doesn't mean you ignore real threats because they've put an actor in this play that's intended to polarize the population. We still need to use our sense of reason. In the case of cows, livestock, cutting down forests to raise cows, that's definitely a problem. Cutting down forests to raise feed for cows, that's definitely a problem. But the cow flatulence methane scenario is simply a smokescreen, and the methane blowouts that are happening on Siberian tundra and the Arctic seafloor, that is an existential threat. Your listeners can search Siberian methane craters. They'll see images of these blowouts. They're bigger on the seafloor. So this methane is thawing. It tends to release in entirety. That's what the Bermuda Triangle situation is, Polly. The Bermuda Triangle is seafloor methane releases, entire fields of methane blow out, raise through the water column. And if there's a surface vessel there, a ship, boat, and it's above that plume as it's reaching the surface, it aerates the water, and that ship has no buoyancy. It's going to go to the bottom intact. That's what's happening. And they've been trying to systematically hide this for many decades. But that methane then goes into the atmosphere. It covers the planet like a layer of glass. It's 120 times more potent than CO2 at trapping gas over a 10-year time horizon. So what are they trying to do about that? To hide that or to slow it down? They're microwaving the atmosphere with opposing frequency transmissions. That's Project Lucy and Alamo. Those are acronyms. So I'm trying to point out that there's one layer of insanity on top of another, on top of another. Isn't this like the pharmaceutical approach again? Take this for that. Here's 20 side effects. Now you need 20 more pharmaceuticals. It's the same mentality, is it not?
And it's petrifying, to be honest with you.
It is. It should be. They're using the atmosphere as a giant physics lab experimentation, and we will also pay the price. And it's also a war zone now, Polly, as we have more and more friction between countries with opposing interests. Their former collusion and cooperation on these operations appears to be perhaps starting to turn into a battlefield.
We love hearing from you at CHGTV. We always are going through your emails and, sending them to each other and discussing the pictures you're sending and, whatever comments you're making. So please continue doing so. You can reach out to us at goodmorning@chg.tv. Thank you so much for watching the Geoengineering Report, and we'll see you next time on CHGTV.
The basic building blocks of climate engineering are to saturate the atmosphere with electrically conductive light scattering particles and polymers, particles like aluminum, barium, strontium, manganese. These particles are then manipulated with extraordinarily powerful radio frequency microwave transmissions that can heat the upper layers of the atmosphere like the ionosphere, that are used to create pressure zones that steer upper level wind currents, which then steer weather systems. These particulates, when they are manipulated with these frequencies, can literally move air masses. This is an integral part of climate engineering that is not known or being acknowledged by many. Extraordinarily powerful and dangerous radio frequency microwave transmissions.
Electromagnetic fields are energy sources, and they're going to be interacting with moisture in the air or our bodies or whatever. And therefore, it's not at all surprising that you're going to find some movement in relation to exposure of weather patterns to electromagnetic fields.
When you have things like HAARP that can send electromagnetic waves into the air column, if you send, lower frequencies, you can calm it all down and you can cool it. Or you can excite it and you can heat it up. So there's complete control of temperature within the environment.
In 1985, Bernard Eastland applied for patents. Many claim that these patents have become the blueprint for HAARP, High Frequency Active Auroral Research Program.
HAARP is a large antenna where we beam radio frequency energy up into the upper atmosphere.
Applications discussed in the patents included destroying missiles. Communications control and disruption were included. There were some other ideas both to possibly modify weather.
What we can do with an antenna is change the portion of the sky into which we insert the energy.
HAARP's combined antennae generate a focused billion-watt high-frequency radio beam, which penetrates the lower ionosphere and interacts with the currents of the auroral electrojet.
In certain applications, the military acknowledges that it can literally lift the ionosphere. And what they say is, it's not a problem, it's a short period of time, yet when you lift the ionosphere up, the lower atmosphere rushes in and fills that void, which changes localized weather patterns.
At its biggest size suggested, if you beamed it for an hour and a half, that would equal the energy in a hydrogen bomb.
HAARP is only one installation of perhaps 100 that are on that scale around the globe. You can create high-pressure domes. In the northern hemisphere, that creates a clockwise spin, just like the pulley. That allows them to steer the upper-level winds into nearly any configuration they wish. So the areas that are under that high-pressure dome fry. They fry. Take a look at that round bubble. Is that not telling? That's a high-pressure dome parked right over the top of us that ensures nothing can flow in. You would never see this meteorologically 20 years ago. Never.
When you have two things that have the same mechanism of action, one would expect that their effects would be either additive or more than additive, that being synergistic. So when we're talking about weather patterns, so you have fog, you have water droplets, you have water in the air. When those water droplets are irradiated with microwaves, they're going to do the same thing they do in our body. They're going to generate reactive oxygen species. And when nanoparticles are in that water, they're going to do the same thing they do in our body. They're going to generate reactive oxygen species. So at minimum, one would expect that these effects would be additive, with the possibility that it could be more than additive.
And if frequencies do that to particulates, Again, what's it doing to us? What's it doing to the web of life? Given anything that's alive has water in it in some form or another, what's happening to us with this? And watch what happens to a flow of water when it's exposed to frequency. Very hard to believe, and when you feel that with particulates, the effect is even more profound. There's a radio frequency transmitter that, based on the signal transmission direction, is isolating precipitation and blocking out a whole section of precipitation. These are one of the radio frequency transmitters, and they're being put up all over the country, all over the world, wherever the grid power will support them. Again, you saw the radio frequency transmission carving out a 90-degree inside corner. That's the overall effect in the end. Completely unnatural. There's not a meteorologist that doesn't know this is going on. No chance. Many ask this question: can cyclones, can hurricanes be manipulated? The short answer is yes. Project Cirrus. The U.S. military has been engaged in hurricane manipulation programs since at least 1947. And these programs have been ongoing ever since, although the U.S. military denies it. They claim they stopped this research. That is a blatant lie. Geoengineeringwatch.org has captured film footage of the radio frequency transmissions being used to manipulate the atmospheric particulates sprayed by climate engineering operations in order to steer and direct hurricanes. They can be manipulated to a degree that few can comprehend. We have NASA satellite images available at geoengineeringwatch.org that show extraordinary atmospheric manipulation off the west coast of Africa, where cyclones in the Atlantic basin originate. There's no theory, there's no hypothesis, there's no conjecture. Cyclone